Hi, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Trust you can see that. So one of the great things about this conference is just meeting and finding out about areas of knowledge that I was unaware of. And this talk is in that genre. I work in essentially applied sciences, focusing on how laws and legal practices work and how in their workings they influence health. And I thought I'd pull out a couple of key points, useful tools for thinking about how law fits into the work that you're broadly going to be doing as change agents in health and other domains. So the first one is just the concept of mechanisms of legal effect. Where does that come from? I have a link there that goes into the literature, but typically I think we all are aware that law can have big and pervasive health effects, both intentional and unintentional. And of course, law structures a whole lot of core activities of our societies. But there's a tendency to sort of think of it as a lever. We can do things with the law, we can push this and push that, and we'll get a result. When in fact, it's incredibly complicated. And certainly in the area of public health, we look at the history of COVID in a lot of places, and certainly in the United States, one of the big problems we had was a vastly oversimplified view of what it takes and the mechanisms you can use to change behaviors and environments through law. And yet this is knowable. It's known in science. There's a great deal of good social science about why people obey the law, how legal systems work, the varied and really rich ways that laws seep into norms and into communities and structure life. And I think my pitch here to people is that this is pretty knowable. This is not rocket science. It's certainly not some of the complexity stuff that I've been looking at. This is something that almost everybody who is working in any kind of policy-related role should just have at their fingertips and can, so that they understand that there's a lot of different ways that things can happen with law, and that and a lot of different ways that things happen through law, and it's accessible and actually doable. And that's tied to another big idea, which is that in a lot of systems, and this is certainly true of the health system, there's a kind of natural history of what happens with law. There's a policy development element. There's trying to figure out exactly how to embody that in a mechanism. There's the politics of getting it enacted. There's the problem of actually putting it into practice, and then actually often neglected, but very important in my world is evaluation of what happened when that policy was enacted, and then how to spread the good ideas and get rid of the bad ones. But most of this work is not done by lawyers. Lawyers come in at a few key points, but the kind of knowledge of how law works, how people are influenced by it, how systems change through law is something that has to be in the heads of the change agents if they really want to be effective. And we hope if we sort of have a greater understanding of that and attention to that, we're going to get better results sooner, a little bit sooner. Second big area that I've worked in coming out of regulatory science is captured in the idea of nodal governance. In this body of work draws on the well-accepted proposition that we can understand power in modern societies as most frequently being exercised through networks of various kinds, which has the corollary that if you want to exercise power, if you want to influence the system, you've got to have a node through which you can access that network. And of course, when we're talking about inequality, very often we're talking about an inequality in access to nodes that let you actually be a player in a network. But another thing that's really important about this, and it's very important for thinking about how we improve our function, improve our work, improve equity, improve participation, is understanding, and what this work goes into, what makes nodes stronger or weaker? What do entities in networks need to do to be effective? And that depends in part upon the material resources they have, the ways they exercise power through force, through money, through information, and of course, very importantly, the way they're thinking, the mentality, the vision of the world that they have. And all of these are sites of opportunity to build and exercise stronger knowledge and capacity as we move forward in our efforts to make change.
30 seconds remaining.
John Braithwaite particularly has been really powerful in talking about this and putting nodal ideas into practice, talking about how that works. And this is a couple of pieces that you might look at in that. And I want to throw out a note to Ed Regula, who's at this meeting, who showed me this drawing about 20 years ago, that emphasizes the importance in this kind of network work of making sure that we have strong connections among our allies and good information sharing. And down in the corner, this idea that we can self-synchronize is really, really important to think about how movements work. And is very much tied to the idea that in systems theory that a powerful lever for change is the big idea or the vision. And so all this work, I hope, if people want to take a look at it from the slides, is something that can be assistance in trying to think about how you put ideas that you've got, sort of policy ideas, into actual effective legal practice, and how you mobilize support for those kind of ideas and help build the strength of your supporters as they approach the networks where much more powerful and well-resourced entities are fighting back. Thank you.